Okay, everybody, welcome. Thanks for coming today. I'm really excited to be able to introduce Brendan and, oops, I already screwed it up. Hold on one sec. I'm really excited to be able to introduce Brendan and Brave here at Facebook. I'm an engineering director here at Facebook. I work on technologies like React and GraphQL, used a ton of JavaScript. I actually met Brendan 15 years ago when I worked at a company called Laszlo Systems. So it's good to see you again, Brendan. I believe we have a video to start, so we'll check that out. And then looking forward to hearing from Brendan, then we'll have Q&A after.
I'm Brendan Eich. I created JavaScript at Netscape, then founded the Mozilla Project and Firefox. I'm now doing Brave as a new browser and a new system for properly valuing user attention. Brave Software is introducing an innovative solution, blockchain-based digital advertising. Online advertising was once simpler. It consisted of advertisers, publishers, and users. Digital advertising has evolved into an opaque and inefficient marketplace. Publishers, advertisers, and users are all being harmed by this system. It's hard to believe, but we're paying to be bothered by ads. Our mobile phone bill is going toward all the bandwidth spent on ads and trackers, up to $23 a month, according to the New York Times. Popular media sites we've seen have as many as 70 trackers calling out, using your battery, slowing down the page load, increasing your data costs. Users are now trying to protect themselves with ad blocking. It's on over 600 million phones and desktops and rising. So we realized something needed to be done. We think the solution must involve a decentralized, transparent, digital ad exchange based on the blockchain. Brave is implementing this in stages. Our first stage is already in the Brave browser, which blocks ads and trackers, but also have a ledger system for rewarding sites based on user attention. The second phase is where we try to move toward a decentralized ad exchange, and that must involve a new kind of currency for user attention, and that's the basic attention token. The token is derived from, and therefore denominates, user attention. Attention is really just focused mental engagement on an advertisement, on great content, on whatever the user is looking at. The browser can anonymously and privately monitor your attention as you view pages in tabs, and it can do this in a way that is highly accurate and highly private. We think this is essential to avoiding fraud and malvertising problems in the current ecosystem. Publishers will receive tokens when ads are viewed. Users also get a share for their attention if they choose to receive ads. From that share, they can then donate back to publishers they wish to support. We also see publishers being paid in tokens, able to use those tokens to reward users to promote their content. And if they like, they can charge for premium content that is paid in tokens. That should become a new standard that's used in the entire advertising ecosystem. We believe that this combination of blockchain, smart contract, browser analytics, and accountable open source code and auditability is the future of advertising on the internet. Thanks for watching that infomercial. I will get into more detail, and I'm happy to take questions. Thanks. Can everybody hear me? That was a bit of an infomercial. We did that before the token sale. And next, thanks. So Brave started in May 2015. We have something that looks like a browser out, but we've also got this token you've heard about. And we're trying to build something that's bigger than just Brave. And it's for the web. It's not just about browsing per se, or ad blocking either. I'm old. I joined Netscape in '95. I did JavaScript in way too little time because it had to get into the Netscape 2 release, which was the big platform release that was about building something that could kill Windows, according to Mark Andreessen. That caused Microsoft to kill Netscape, so be careful what you say in front of the angry bull. But JavaScript got out there in time. That was the plan. And like a successful bug, it spread. I founded Mozilla.org with Jamie Zawinski and others in '98. We didn't have good odds then, according to everybody. Microsoft was going to and did in fact monopolize, and in fact get convicted of abusing its monopoly of the browser market, tying the browser to the operating system aggressively. Netscape got bought by AOL and eventually kind of died. But I plugged away at Mozilla, and we did Firefox, and we restarted the browser market. And we kind of knew it was possible because Microsoft was so neglectful. I mean, between not liking standardization and not liking the antitrust case, they decided, the web is too hard. Let's go back to Windows. We'll do Windows Vista. That'll be great. And that didn't work out too well for them either. And then, nobody saw the iPhone coming until 2007. But Firefox was there from 2004, 1.0. It was already getting big. And we had a good search partnership with Google, which was a pretty clean, only a search engine with search ads business at that point. I knew about Bitcoin. I should have got some, but I knew enough to have somebody at Mozilla give a talk on it in, I think, 2010 or 11, Brian Warner. And it was interesting to me, but I wasn't able to do anything with it, certainly not in Mozilla. I definitely knew about Ethereum because I visited the Ethereum London office in July 2015, 2 years ago. And I met Stefan Tawal, who sort of infamously is associated with the DAO attack later. And I was talking even then about, since I'd started Brave, about something I called Brave Coin. I didn't want to do my own blockchain, though. So I had to put first things first and couldn't use Ethereum. Ethereum was small then, right? It was just done the Genesis block auction at the end of the previous year. And Stefan gave me some code, Solidity code, and I was horrified to see that people had been inspired by JavaScript, even though they say there are important differences with JavaScript. There are. The differences don't seem to be improvements, but I set that code aside, and then the DAO attack happened, and I got it out and I looked at it and I said, this has the same flaw as the DAO wallet, the reentrancy vulnerability. So I'm glad I didn't do anything with it, but I wanted to do something with Bravecoin in order to see what could be done with an old idea that is sometimes called social credit. So when people use something like the web, they're using a large shared system, and the costs are sometimes high, and they have to be covered by things like ads or other kinds of sort of extracting rent. And the users generally are the farm animals. They don't get anything out of it except maybe a great experience, maybe a not great experience. But I thought, what if we could give users sort of a cryptocurrency just for being users, for their attention? So that was what inspired me to look at Ethereum in 15. Brave came out in beta, very early beta in 16, got into the app stores late February, has done really well. And then we did the BAT. So that's kind of what I've been doing. And as the infomercial said, there's a lot of problems. People experience this, especially on mobile, especially on media sites, also news sites. A lot of the publishers don't know what to do, and they're seeing less revenue, so they tend to put more tags on the page. I think TMZ at one point had like over 12 header bidders in a wrapper, tons of calls out. On mobile, sometimes the page never loads. It's really bad, and you're paying for it, as noted, and it's going through a lot of indirection. So there's malware and fraud coming and going, and users generally feel kind of taken advantage of. They may not know that they're paying so much of their data if they're paying a tiered plan, but they kind of feel like they're being trapped, especially when there's retargeting, and that bugs them, and rightly so. And then as they dig deeper, they realize what's going on, and that leads to the most woke users coming to ad blockers, and that's an ongoing thing. Brave is an attempt to transcend the old categories of browser and ad blocker by packaging things together into one integrated design that works and that tries to sort of lead the market. You can do that with all browsers. Firefox did it and restarted standards, even though Firefox was growing from a few percent to a height of 27%. 2011, I believe, and then fell to Chrome. But getting just a few percent in a market, if you're getting lead users and web developers, can let you move the market. There's lots of examples of this. Lots of reasons why it's so. I think Taleb was talked about like all salt is kosher salt or halal salt. There's no point in making several kinds of salt. So small share cohorts can have big effects, and that was the idea with Firefox, and that's also the idea with Brave. We want to get users. We want to grow. The way to do that is to make it really fast and easy to use, not have to install an extension. Right there, you lose a lot of users. If you don't have any skills with configuring extensions, you're kind of stuck. Ad blockers tend to misfire. They're false positives. That also can cause people to turn them off. And publishers have gotten into this habit of saying, oh, you're using an ad blocker. Turn it off or subscribe or we hate you, go away, which is really dumb because every time they do that, I've seen their Alexa charts just go down. But we can work around all of that, and we do. I don't know if people use Forbes. It has this annoying lightbox pre-stitial with a countdown. Get rid of that. There's just a lot of things you can do. I knew Aaron Boudman when he was at Google doing Firefox and Grease Monkey, and the whole idea of Grease Monkey as a service has been floating around out there. I ran into somebody from BEA who's, I think, at Amazon, Adam Bosworth, and he was also, 2004, he was very keen on this idea. Create another tier of content adaptation. It's like between ESPN and you can have some hobbits who make a great version of ESPN for you. Now, it's kind of sketchy because ESPN might hate them and sue them. ESPN changes its content and the Grease Monkey scripts break and fail hard instead of failing soft. But there's something attractive about it. And ad blocking is a specific instance, but I think there's a more general idea there. Getting rid of the Forbes pre-stitial is kind of a no-brainer. Is anyone familiar with this fabulous diagram? This is by Luma Partners, Terry Kawaja's company. It's called Lumascape. I think this is a display ad, or is this video and display slide? One of those. They all look the same. I joke that they're like Mad Magazine fold-ins, and as they fold in, you see, Alfred E. Newman's face, or Spy versus Spy, or a lot of companies in the middle trying to get bought by Oracle and Salesforce and IBM. And it's the arrows tell you something. They tell you that the money is coming in from the marketing side and going to the right. There's like analytics and attribution flow backwards. Not very effective, in my opinion. There's a ton of intermediaries. Marx was right, cut out the middleman. There's just too many people with their hands in the pie tin, taking big slices out and letting who knows what happen to the pie. So by the time the publisher gets what's left in the tin, it's pretty ugly. And we've talked to a lot of publishers. I've been talking to them since even late Mozilla days. We started looking into ad tech. It was hard to do anything with a big browser. I'll say that. Whether you're Mozilla or Edge, certainly Google won't do anything materially adverse to their main revenue source. They would be bad fiduciaries if they did. But even Microsoft, they have shareholders, they have Bing. They can't block ads by default. And in fact, Bing says, no search deal for you, Brave, because you block ads by default. I'm working on this. It's silly. But this system is an evolved system. It's very much like a biological ecosystem, and it's not healthy. So we think we can do better. Ad blocking is the sort of user self-defense response to the problems with that ecosystem, the ecological problems, and it's not going away. People think, oh, ad blocking leveled off last year. Well, no, it didn't. It's different in different parts of the world. It's different on mobile in different parts of the world, but it's growing everywhere, and it should. So if you wanted to fix the ecosystem without totally replacing it, because I don't believe in that opportunity coming along for the web, I think the web has to always evolve. You want to find an evolutionary path that keeps what's good or what's essential in that system and gets rid of what's bad. So websites, publishers, Twitch account holders, YouTubers, those seem like content creators who need to get compensated one way or another. The users in the mix, obviously, because user activity can lead to sales, and marketing serves sales, and advertising serves marketing. So probably advertisers are in there. Some people hope that advertising goes away and everyone funds the web through donations, automatic contributions of some sort. I'd love to see that. I'm skeptical. There's too much money right now. $72 billion in the US on digital in 2016. Maybe 7 or 8 billion of that fraud. No one really knows. So there's just a lot of money at stake, and thinking it can be replaced by donations, while that's something we support and we already supported in Brave even last year, is making too much of a risky bet on just one path. So we're thinking ads, and to clean up the system, we came up with this token that expresses attention. If you think about a lot of ads, they have a simple viewability model. They have pretty fraud-ridden confirmation and analytics, and we can do better. And the token also allows us to see gross, token flows on a blockchain. There are scaling issues with all blockchains, but we're optimistic that Ethereum will rise to the challenge. We're using what's now a standard token format or standard for tokens called ERC20. We didn't know this, but it allowed us to be listed on exchanges right away. We didn't coordinate at all for that. And yeah, we had a very fast sale. We could have obviously raised more, but I think we were okay. We did 36 million in 2 blocks on Ethereum, and needed a little straggler transaction to close it out. The number of holders was originally like 190. It's diffused to 9,000, I guess. It's being traded among them. We pre-created, this was the social credit idea, 300 million tokens, 500 million total pre-created, 300 million plus some reserves and some team grants in lockup on the blockchain for 180 days. But the 300 million are to be given out to users to compensate them for the past abuses, to get them to a sort of a quid pro quo for taking some risk and trying the new platform. And the new platform isn't just Brave, it's Brave with the ability to donate, the ability to get private ads that are anonymous, that do not track you, that have no cookies or other trackers, that can pay a hefty revenue share to the user if they're in a user private slot, not on a publisher page. That model is what we're building the bat for. The user growth pool should help us acquire users. The triangle is intentional. We believe there's a real value in a deterministic, personalized model for ads. We acknowledge that you need, eventually in the fullness of time, you might need things like cohorts and ID syncs of various kinds, but we're not going to rush into that because it's such a big arbitrage system, and it's hard to keep your privacy in that world. So we're starting with an opt-in model. The user gets rewarded with tokens. We might even do matching tokens for donations. The model in Brave, which I'll show in a little bit, the UX for, allows you to say, I'm going to spend $5 a month on my favorite sites or my top sites without having to manually administer the division of that $5 among the sites. It's very lightweight. And if we use the user growth pool, we can match people's donations to encourage more donations, to say we're in favor of that. And the private ad revenue, if it flows, we'll have to get ad deals from trials where we don't charge to where we're actually getting paid. We give like 70% of the revenue to the user if it's in a private slot. That means the user can take it if they go through a full KYC, bottom of the funnel, painful path. But in the upper funnel, they can just let it donate back to their top sites. So we think a lot of users, because it's not going to be a huge amount of money each month, will just let it donate and maybe even zero out their wallet. That might look a lot like today's system where the user doesn't get paid, but in our system, the user is in the intermediary instead of all those parasites in the Lumascape. And the system is definitely more private and more efficient because there aren't all those intermediaries. There isn't all this, layers of confirmation bias trying to piece together user identity from partial surveillance. There's instead a very detailed user model. And that's the anonymity shield. That's something that hasn't been done before that I know of. People have tried, now and then you've seen things like All Advantage, which was a PC app, 1999, I think. It did really well. It was sort of a news reader or browser, and it had ads along the bottom, I think, and it gave users a cut of the revenue, and it said, tell your friends and family. And so it grew, and then the dot-com crash happened, and it crashed. It also got in trouble with early US federal anti-spam law, which I think was successfully contested by the founders because it wasn't quite spam, it was more like friends and family, like your cousin bugging you. But it was one of the few attempts to give users a revenue share that wasn't totally shady or criminal. So we're going to try this. And the publisher relationship, we'd love to help publishers other than through donations. We'd love to be an indirect ad partner for big publishers because I know a bunch of them. But they're slow, so we're not going to wait for them. Question? No, we have a private sync in Brave. It's based on secret key pairing with QR code with a word list fallback. It's stored in encrypted blobs, S3 key-only storage, cheaper if you don't use the value storage. It's in Brave now. It's for bookmarks and settings. We're extending it to include the machine learning, data.
So like the private data does leave your device then, but it's like safe.
It's encrypted. Yeah, for various reasons, what Cory Doctorow calls the Ulysses Pact, right? Odysseus has his men plug their ears with wax and lash him to the mast, because he wants to hear the sirens, but he doesn't want to get corrupted by them. And Cory makes the point you should always try to think about what would happen if somebody offered you too much money to sell your users out. So we don't want your data. We don't want it on our servers. We don't want your keys. Now there is a risk you'll lose it. That's always the trade-off. Just like the bat has to be in a wallet that's got a backed up secret key somehow. We're not talking a huge amount of money here. And if you lose your data, you start over. We will figure out a backup story because we don't want to have the sync story, which is, you lose all your devices, that data is gone, conflated with the backup story, which is a legitimate and separate problem. But great question, thank you. I hope everybody could hear that. So we're not waiting for publishers. Sorry. Publishers are distressed, and they're also skeptical of ad blockers, and they don't know what to do. They have lots of potential and real partners among the vendors, and they get hyped every year on the new thing that's going to save them, and usually they get taken to the cleaners. But we're talking to a lot of them from big to small. We're already giving Bitcoin to them. That's what we prototyped the system in before the token sale. And we're talking to advertisers, mainly agencies, but I know some big brands. We'll see if we can get some trials going. I think they're interested in showing that they're thinking around ahead of the curve, looking around the corner, what could happen if ad blocking got really big. So the phases for the BAT are the current phase, codenamed Mercury, where we're trying to replace the Bitcoin-based sort of anonymous contribution rail with the BAT. So moving from Bitcoin blockchain to Ethereum without suffering too high gas costs, figuring out the right wallet approach. For Bitcoin, it was a mature system. We partnered with BitGo. We used multi-sig, and we avoided custody of user funds, which is important if you don't want to face FinCEN scrutiny and get a money transmitter license or be an MSB. So we don't hold the keys to user wallets, just like we don't hold the keys to the user data. For phase 2, we're going to bring in some advertisers, do some trials, and prove that the local data model, which the user can supplement when they onboard, but which stays on device in the clear, only on device in the clear and synced cross device. See how well that works. And that requires a local agent you opt into. It's not part of the baseline Brave. Question in the back. Time's running low. And we'll see how well that works. The trials will be microbat flows that we subsidize. That'll happen, I think, late this year and into next year. And then, as we prove that and standardize the smart contracts on chain and the sort of unavoidable endpoint software standards for any attention app, whether it's Brave or Firefox or Edge or a game or Messenger, we'll try to bring other apps into a trade group that can share the BAT and handle the governance of the BAT. This is what the UX looks like in Brave. It's mocked up a little bit here because we did it with Bitcoin. This is how it will look with BAT. I don't think this is available yet. You can do things like pin fixed percentage of your monthly budget to sites you like. Whether you browse them or not, they'll get that amount anonymously. What's below that is sort of private analytics, again, totally on device. It's like a personal chart beats based on view and time spent on focus tab. And it's aware of windows occluding the tab and things like that. We'd like to get YouTube and Twitch, as I mentioned earlier, account holders to be payable. So our model uses a URL to designate the payable resource. It's not just a domain name. The current Bitcoin system does just use domain names. And besides being, automatic, I would say semi-automatic, but it's more than half. It's every 30 days, there's a little notification in the browser saying, would you like to adjust your your donations. And nothing happens if you don't set a budget and fund your wallet. It's also anonymous. If your top 10 sites is known to a server, that's a fingerprint, a very hot fingerprint. And so if you use something like Flatter Plus or Blendle, you're totally trusting them. And their terms of use, I've read them, they're not good. Like they could sell your data out. There's no Ulysses Pact. All right, they could take your data and sell it and sell themselves to Oracle. So with us, we use a zero-knowledge proof protocol called Anonyze. It's actually Anonyze 2. It was developed by some academics. It's pretty cool. It was used for anonymous surveys in their classes. It has pretty strong anonymity properties. This is, I'm going to go a little over if it's okay. This is the flow of BAT that we're envisioning. So a multitude of users browse various sites. Let's say one of them goes to the Huffington Post, 8% of monthly time, active time. That turns into these anonymous votes through the Anonyze protocol. Their wallet at the end of the 30-day period will have 50 BAT sent to an escrow wallet. Again, we're avoiding custody with multi-sig or even single sig. Generally trying not to have too many gas charges, not having custody of funds to avoid having to be a money transmitter. The anonymity barrier has some interesting properties. Users can't claw back. There's just no link to the user ID. So you cannot say, hey, I donated and I really changed my mind, I want it back. That's part of the game. We don't wait for the sites to all sign up so that we pull the money for the sites in escrow. Some sites will never sign up. We have a sort of Powerball system where every 180 days, we haven't done it yet with Bitcoin, the uncollected amount gets shared out among the publishers who have signed up and verified. And we have this sort of payment system that with Bitcoin currently requires publishers to get a Bitcoin wallet, which is a huge ask, but we got 170 publishers all the way through, and 1,000 more or more than 1,000 on the front of the funnel. With the BAT, we can, through a partner, just go to fiat, which is what they want. Publishers want to be paid in fiat, no surprise. Advertisers want to pay in fiat, so we have a partner now to do that. Oh yeah, we're using Facebook to grow our global community. It's going very well, actually, just the last few weeks. That's about it, but I probably went fast, so happy to take more questions. Thanks. So 5% on the donation flow, we just picked that number out of the air. It's a little high, but we didn't know how much it would cost us to build. We'd like for the ad revenue, like I said, to give the user 70% of the gross revenue for an ad shown like once a day in a user private slot, like a pinned private tab that has a notification channel to let the user know at the right time, not bug them in the middle of work. That will be a long form video ad, could be high CPX. Maybe one a day is not often enough, but we'd like to start with a very different ad model and give the user 70%. We're going to have some costs. We would have 30% in that case. So between a mix of small percent on the donation flow and no more than 30 on the ad flow. And one of the principles we laid out in our new website, I think it's there, says we want to share revenue with our users where they get at least the same percentage or more that we get. It's one of those things that if you don't do this right, you look like spyware. You look like somebody who's trying to, raid the user data. So we're doing, deterministic anonymity through zero knowledge. We're doing a lesser or equal revenue share to the user, and we're doing it on open source and on the blockchain. If we could do remote attestation, we would. It's not a solved problem, but we would like to have the whole system be very open and auditable. And yeah, our take rate will be fixed, and you could actually audit the blockchain, which is cool, and see that we're not, taking more than we say.
So I guess the other point to be fully decentralized, most of this functionality is going to be how do you feel about the scalability of years right now? How confident are you that this will be fine?
Yeah, I said this on Twitter. I mean, to tell you a story about Bitcoin, the question is scalability. Bitcoin became very expensive for us, and now it's forked and whatever, things will get better. But we were having users naively through Coinbase fund $5 a month. And because they weren't signed up with a Coinbase account, that was just a single buy. They were paying $4.50 in fees. We refunded the fee and shut it down the widget. I know people still using it, but they're using Coinbase accounts and they're buying $30 of Bitcoin or $100. So they're amortizing the fee better. we could not get Coinbase to amortize for us. They wouldn't take the aggregation risk. So Bitcoin just wasn't working. And the confirmation times went to 60 hours. There were a lot of problems. Maybe they'll get fixed, but there weren't tokens on Bitcoin either. You have to do root stock or whatever. I don't know. Something that isn't quite real. So we went with Ethereum, and we made a big bet that Vitalik and company are more pragmatic and innovative. We could be wrong. We could have to do our own blockchain, like I was thinking about in 2015 and deciding I couldn't afford. We'll be agile. We're not religious about this, but we do think Ethereum obviously got a lot of momentum with tokens, and now they have a scaling problem and a liquidity problem, and they have to solve it. So we're on that boat for now. If it gets torpedoed, we'll jump off, swim somewhere.
Thanks. What do you think is the biggest barrier to user adoption of the actual browser, and how do you guys plan on overcoming that?
So I think part of what is a barrier to a small browser growing is just people hearing about it and hearing how it's different. And as I say, we want to transcend the browser category because it's kind of mature or maybe old. It's not used on mobile as much, though the bigger the screen and the worse the app choice, people do go to the browser. There's sort of an equilibrium. Vision Mobile did a study where it was like 10% of time on phone and browser. We could do Brave web views. We'd like to get the revenue model stood up and then share the revenue with Twitter to get them to embed what would be basically our wrapper around the OS web view. We're not in the web engine business. But to get users to adopt, you have to hit them where they're feeling some pain, or you have to give them such pleasure that they just come back. Right? This is either it's like a chronic itch cream, or it's a cancer cure, it's Viagra, right? You want to get something on that spectrum. With Brave, I think it's really people who are becoming aware of how much ads are hurting their experience, how they slow things down, how retargeting reveals how they're being profiled and stalked, and they get upset enough that they try Brave, and then they suddenly say, "Wow, this is faster." So on Android, we're 3 to 7 times faster on a selection of media and news sites than Chrome. Chrome on Android has no ad blocking extension model. I understand this. Extensions on browsers are a source of all sorts of problems, quality problems, support problems. All the top browsers have them on desktop, but not on mobile. And so Google can say no extensions; they're too hazardous. And by the way, that means no ad blocking extensions. That means on Android you have to get a separate browser. The Samsung browser has AdBlock Fast, which is a clone of the iOS content blocking model. You install AdBlock Fast as a separate app, and it augments the Samsung browser to be an ad blocking browser. Very few users can handle that complexity. So we give them something that looks just like Chrome, except for the orange lion up in the corner, and it's 3 to 7 times faster. So that's our main growth vector right now. It's getting the word out that here's something that makes your life better. Speed, privacy too, safety from malware, but probably in that order. Speed always works. Speed worked with Firefox. And people back in the day, Opera was right. Opera would say, we're faster than Firefox. And it's like, well, maybe, but there's perception. There's also the open source Halo for Firefox helped, whereas if you recall, Opera in 2004 had a premium version that the free leg had ads in the user interface. People didn't like that. So there's various reasons why perception of speed matters. Chrome itself, when it came out, was faster, but not 3x, not 10x. And Brave is legitimately faster on a lot of sites because the sites are just festooned with JavaScript, right? My bad child from 1995, 22 years old, it's out of the house. And the publishers don't often have the tech savvy to know that they're hurting themselves. They either don't see the page abandonment as a problem, or they have such churn they can't deduce that it was caused by the extra header bidder scripts and so on. But it's tons of scripts.
So I might be just a little bit confused, but I feel like there's kind of 2 things that I'm trying to squish them together to understand this better. One is that it sounds like the browser does ad blocking to speed up performance, but then 2, it also sounds like the revenue model depends on advertising.
Opt-in.
Gotcha.
And private. So we don't know if this will work, but I think since we pre-announced it and got lots of controversy and growth from early controversy, the Newspaper Association of America sent us an angry letter. The PDF's file name was ceaseanddesist.pdf, but they realized we weren't doing anything, we were just talking about it. So they took those words out of the body of the letter, and they forgot to change the file name. It was kind of funny. And it was signed by all the Associate General Counsels of the New York Times and Washington Post and so on. And the best part was we thought they might have been like trolling us. They said, "How dare you infringe our copyright and trademark by replacing our ads?" Because we were just talking about the idea of doing indirect ads through the browser, which is how they get placed now by JavaScript in every site out there. But we were talking about doing it in a private way and sharing the revenue with the publisher without, we were light on who was a partner and who consented. They got so angry that they said they had copyright and trademark to those ads. Now, these are indirect ads, programmatic ads. The month before, there was malware, the Angler exploit kit, on the front page of the New York Times. Comes in through an exchange, sees fresh meat through tracking, and it attacks it. And the New York Times doesn't want to claim trademark and copyright of malware, so they backed off. It was a teaching moment for the people who were paying attention. This year, I was on a South by panel with Meredith Levine, the CRO of the New York Times, and she was trying to say the same thing. You must know your vendors. You must do direct sales. You must have better ads. We should all have better ads. Oh, and by the way, we can't lose a cent of revenue to ad blocking. Ad blocking is just bad. I'm like, Meredith, you cannot have it both ways, right? Ad blocking exists for a reason. There are bad ads even on your site. So yeah, we're trying to avoid there's a thin edge of the wedge here. We're not going to be doing ads by default. We're not going to be putting them on publisher pages without partnering with the publishers. User private channels are interesting. WeChat has the one-a-day offer through the chatbot. There are a few other examples over the years of similar things. We have users who want to try it. Whether it makes us enough money to cross over, we'll find out. I'm going to let you guys run the show.
What does the data flow for analytics look like in this?
That's a little sketchy. So we're still building that. First of all, we think with large anonymity sets, we can do. Oops, I think I just killed that. We think we can do better with very large anonymity sets, but if you just look at the zero knowledge proof keeps us or anybody else from seeing your particular top 10 site list, which is a fingerprint. What matters more, I think, to the ecosystem at the end of the day is what's going on here for the publishers. They want to see that kind of analytics, and the advertisers, which aren't really depicted here well, they want to do forecasting. They want to see, what's the zeitgeist? What do your users look like? Like, I'm already talking to agencies, and they're saying, well, can you profile your users? And we're a privacy browser. We don't profile our users. We can push poll them. We can try to sample them somehow. And the agencies said, this is just a trial, make it up. But we'll get some data. It doesn't have to be super scientific. For the actual system at scale, I think we can get good forecasting data out, and we can put it on the blockchain. We can put some kind of, like storage, we can put a bunch of public attestations about our users en masse, not individual, but aggregated. And it will not be linked to any user ID. It will not be linkable to any user ID. It will not be like one of those, the corpora that get released every once in a while that have supposedly have all the PII removed. This DEF CON talk, did anybody see that? It was a German researcher and a collaborator. They somehow got a browsing history corpus somebody had access to and had supposedly anonymized. And these researchers said, okay, here's Judge so-and-so, and there's his porn history, right? So they re-identify people right away. This is why Cory Doctorow doesn't believe in differential privacy or k-anonymity. But for analytics, for sort of bulk trends, I think you can do all right if you have a large enough set. That's our theory.
But do you think ultimately Facebook will be a partner or adversary?
Definitely could be a partner. We don't touch Facebook ads right now, by the way. We draw a bright line as we can around first-party ads. So we don't touch Google search ads either. Some people want us to. They're like, those things are spying on me. And it's like, no, they're not. The worst part of the Google search result page is the 10 clicks, the 10 links, right? The 10 links are actually, people hate this because you can't copy them easily. They're JavaScript that's rewritten as you click, and they're tracking you. So we'd like to block that. We leave the search ads alone. We leave the Facebook ads alone right now. We leave first-party ads alone. Suppose, you go to a big site that can do direct sales, and they have just a gorgeous video in the middle of their front page above the fold. It's an ad, but how do you know? It could be part of the site. We don't want to block that. Now, it turns out, like L.com, my favorite example, has like a Louis Vuitton handbag custom video carousel. It's like the bottom half of the above the fold content. And it's the whole editorial team at L. I know Mike Smith at Hearst does a great job making it blend in. we block it. So then you see half of Susan Sarandon on the red carpet at Cannes coming out from below the fold. It doesn't look right. The reason we block that direct sold Louis Vuitton ad is because it's full of Google tags. It places with DFP. It's got some custom third-party click tracker partner who's definitely tracking users and aggregating profiles on their own to sell themselves to Salesforce or whatever. So we block it. We don't mean to, and we'd love to let it present. And it turns out it uses only 3 DFP APIs that we can shim. So we could actually make that ad show up. But then there's the performance question. How does it confirm? That's the click tracker partner we block. We could replace that and do zero knowledge, confirmation. That's a conversation with the publisher. That's us emulating the third-party confirmation APIs. We haven't gotten there yet, but we would like to do that. But yeah, we try to leave first-party ads alone. So we hope Facebook is inclined toward us favorably.
What can you help me understand what's the main benefit of putting this on the blockchain versus just doing it through a browser?
Well, you could certainly you could do money in the browser, but if you do it with fiat, you're talking about getting people to connect their bank account, like ACH. It's terrible, right? The sub-dollar transactions to pennywise transactions to identify that it was legit takes sometimes days to do that. If we end up in the middle of that money flow, we need an MTL. That's like $5 million and 48 states regulators up in our kitchen months of the year. It's not good. I mean, PayPal paid it. A lot of companies pay it. Abra is another crypto company that's using Bitcoin and using custody to the user and peer-to-peer to avoid custody of funds, so they avoid an MTL burden. So that right there is a reason for a blockchain. Particular blockchain, Ethereum has token support. We did a token. Didn't want to do my own blockchain, so we're a level up. Transparency. Blockchains allow you to audit things. You're not going to do microflows, even if the scaling problems were solved. You don't want to have any transaction fee on a tiny donation or ad impression payment. So you're going to aggregate in the browser, but when you clear, you can aggregate and you can show, here's the gross flow from the advertisers, paying to the publishers getting paid. Somebody can map it out and see there's no embezzling. It's clean.
You mentioned that individual users would have an option to cash out, but it would kind of be a hassle because the main goal is for them to donate to the content creators, and that you plan to support sort of individual content creators on like YouTube and Twitch. I'm curious how you are going to facilitate cashing out for the content creators in less of a hassle.
Very similar. So the partner who we're going to announce this week, if I have my way, can do KYC, and you have to do KYC, which means know your customer. If you're not familiar, know your client. Sometimes it's what banks do. Otherwise, this whole thing's a giant fraud magnet. Not so much the donation system we set up and prototype with Bitcoin, because you can't really defraud yourself. It's money laundering. It's not good because there's a $20 a month limit. You're not going to launder money efficiently through it. But if we get advertisers and we get 70% revenue to users, the obvious question I get in Reddit is, well, I'm just going to set up my botnet and run a bunch of Brave instances and take all the money. It's like, good luck. Even with the publisher KYC for the Bitcoin system, we require a W9 or W8 Benny if you're out of the country. We require a phone number. We were looking before we switched to the new partner at BlockScore or similar that can do third-party KYC. This is like boots on the ground. You have to know it's a real person. There's still some tail risk of casual fraud, but nobody who's running a botnet can afford to, fake the tax ID and answer the phone and. So that's the part of the funnel, exiting the bottom of the funnel that I mentioned being harsh, because otherwise we will get taken to the cleaners on fraud, and we don't want to. If you're a publisher and you want to, you're a top Twitch star and you want to get paid, you're a YouTuber and they cut your revenue because of unsafe ads by a third and you're starving, we'd like to give you your fair share. It's worth it for you to KYC, and you're probably legit.
Yeah, I've used the desktop version of Brave and the mobile version of Brave, and I noticed like desktop seems to have more customizations. I was kind of curious, like why I decided to invest more in desktop. That's my first question. And
I mentioned we took. Hey, how's it going? We took Chrome pretty much on Android, which is all open source, and used it with minimal change. The smartphone, smaller user interface, surface area to tile, so we didn't have to customize as much. The Brave Shield is there. Blocking scripts, and no script is built in, so you can block first-party scripts. By the way, that's a great way to read the Washington Post, because otherwise they'll say, you're running an ad blocker, you must subscribe or whitelist or go away. and I just block scripts. I kill JavaScript entirely, and it works great because accessibility, right? With the laptop, I think we saw more opportunity to customize and be different. I'm not sure that wasn't a mistake. You don't get to redo these things because it had to do with who I was recruiting to work on it. We chose Electron, which, no offense, was a pig in a poke and terrible for security. And I have a friend at Microsoft who says they may remove it from all Electron apps from the Windows Store. I guess they'll have to do VS Code with our Muon fork. We turned the sandbox back on. If you can believe it, Electron turned off the Chromium sandbox for a renderer because they wanted Node.js in there and NPM in there. Disaster. Don't get me started. I'm happy. I'm in my happy place again. We forked Electron. Electron did allow us to do more custom UX. You'll see, I think, more of that, like the bookmark manager needs work. You'll see more innovation over time. The real innovation, I think, for us is not anything browser specific. Like I said, that's the old category we're transcending. Machine learning, which Apple, I talked to them in February, and they're now doing a local classifier for their third-party cookie block. We want machine learning for exception management. Every time you do ad blocking, you have some malfunction, fraction, and you want to drive that as close to zero as possible, but it'll never go to zero. You can probably solve it with machine learning. We think so. You can make it so that, like the Washington Post, should be in reader mode because JavaScript's not doing anything for you anyway. And reader mode might just be blocking scripts. That might be the first step. So we think we can automate that.
That was actually my second question. I basically want to know how where you're sourcing the ad blocking scripts from, and whether you had considered something closer to reader mode, which was a more aggressive sort of like highlighting, like kind of like user agent highlighting.
Tor private tabs, because people think private tabs or windows in browsers are network private, and then they're not. Of course, we're doing Tor private tabs because we were tight with the Tor team, and they normally wouldn't let any old client use the network, but they're open to us doing it. Maybe a few other clients. So Tor private tabs and like machine learning to automate block no script essentially. Better sort of reader mode on steroids. A more intentional approach that can eventually lead to web standards, because web standards should have evolved above the the sort of reductionistic level of cookies and scripts and images. They should have evolved to talk about higher level domain of discourse, ads and trackers and pages and news versus media sites. More semantic markup, that's always been a goal without requiring it. We think that the way to get there is to actually give users the ability to choose something like Brea that does a better job presenting, and that drives back feedback into the web standards. We're going to do that. KeyPack is coming up.
Got another question? Yeah.
Yeah. Right now the beta participants are they're buying into the Powerball, which may not be obvious. They're buying into us delivering, which we're going to announce. I think we have announced WikiHow and archive.org. Brewster did a nice post. Some of the big New York publishers are among the top recipients. Some of them are actually in the process of verifying, believe it or not. But I can't name them yet without their consent. So yeah, we want to get the publishers to endorse us. That would be really good. But like I said earlier, publishers are kind of beleaguered and slow in general. So we're not waiting for them. There was maybe you're going to ask this. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I have another one. So I understood, I think, most of the presentation, and I'm sold on the technical aspects of it, the privacy and the fairness and all of it, but it feels like the product marketing messaging might be a little bit too complex for the average user. It might be stifling growth, right? So
I told people that there would be engineers here, and I was told there would be, so I made it very technical. This is not a marketing pitch. We're a little weak on marketing, engineer-heavy startup, but we're hiring people and building out that message. And the thing that really works, I think, is speed, privacy. There's some general, I think, rising resentment of Google that helps us. And the fact that we're compatible with Chromium across a bunch of platforms, certainly Android helps. So yeah, getting the message out doesn't involve technical talk, and you don't want to tell people, oh, you must get your Nano S ledger and do your crypto and count your bitcoins and be a dwarf under the mountain. Nobody wants to do that. By the way, when we did the sale, we used these, and I had nightmares, but I was waking up sweating because I could see myself dropping in the ocean because we did it from a overseas jurisdiction, from a subsidiary that we created for optimization of taxes. But I didn't drop it. We had one malfunction though. I thought there might be questions. People wanted me to speculate on the token environment as to regulatory risk. I don't know what else to say than what I've heard. There was a consensus event in New York in May, and the woman from the SEC said we're going to take a case-by-case approach. In the Dow report, the Dow token bulletin that came out 2 weeks ago, very good initial wording about we're going to take a facts and circumstances approach. They adverted to tokens with utility that are not securities, so they acknowledge that such things can exist. That's what we have designed the BAT to be. The Dow token was clearly a security, it had voting rights and vesting and all sorts of stuff. It was obviously a security. After the Dow attack, they returned to ETH and took the whole thing down. So there was nothing for the regulators to do. But I can believe, and I've heard rumors that the SEC is looking closely at some of the token sales that have been frankly sketchy. Terms changed during the sale, a public cap and a hidden secret cap, unaudited smart contracts, security-like promises of gain. That's bad. Don't do that. That's just going to get you in hot water. But the facts and circumstances approach is good because I think they don't want to kill the golden goose, right? They realize that there's something here. The Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, JP Morgan, right? The founder of the Federal Reserve. There's something here that is big. It's not just the 150 billion or whatever it is in crypto. It's a bunch of incumbents taking an interest. Looks solid. So I don't know what's going to happen next month or the month after that. I think we had great and expensive advice from Perkins Coie and Deloitte, and we did our sale, and we didn't raise too much, and we're building out the platform, transporting from Bitcoin to the BAT, getting ad deals as soon as we can. I think we'll be okay.
Or let me. Concerning the regulatory environment, recently, so Bittrex, they released one of the few exchanges, which I thought was pretty cool, that talked that, they're talking with different, regulators and making sure that they're not putting on securities on their exchange. Do you believe that they're being a little wishful thinking? I know there's certain tokens that they purposely didn't put on there, but do you think they're exploring a gray area that could possibly get them in trouble?
Exchanges are where the regulators can go to have the most effect. It's hard to go after some, sale to anonymous buyers that happened from some part of the world that the U.S. doesn't have a treaty with or whatever. But the exchanges, especially the ones at U.S. Nexus, are the ones that are going to be scrutinized. So some of them, like Bittrex, already got ahead of it. They list a BAT, by the way. They said, we're looking facts and circumstances. Is this token a security? Does this look like a utility? And if they're wrong, they'll delist it, and maybe they'll get fined. Probably not. I'm not an exchange. Fortunately, we don't touch exchanges. We just assume that they'll come about, and they have. So, thank you.
So like this is a bit of a vague question, but how do you see crypto speculation kind of messing up with the design here?
Oh, you mean if the price goes crazy or something?
Yeah, if it fluctuates really high up or down.
Yeah, we did a
publishers are
capped
waiting to
sale.
cash out and for the escrow.
The user growth, well, so this is a monthly cycle. We think any huge volatility within the month, we're just going to take the heat. Aber does something interesting. They have sort of they call it a put option. I don't know how much of it is on the Bitcoin script and how much of it is them just promising to make up for a shortfall, but they do some kind of volatility hedge. We could do that if we had to, especially with Ethereum. You could actually do it on chain at some cost, but we're not sweating about volatility within the month. And over longer time frames, we're just going to have the BAT, as a unit of account for attention. It can divide down to a tiny fraction of what it is right now, and it's a fixed cap sale. So we can make, as BATs become more dear, we can give fewer out to get new users to match user donations. We'll adapt. It'll float.
Yeah.
You can see risk of getting sued from publishers not on the platform due to the Powerball.
Yes, the Powerball idea is one of those things where you can tell people about it. You can have the lawyers bless it. You can put it in the T's and C's, and you can still get sued. I would like to have a bunch of verified publishers, and we will have an option in the UX. I think it might already be there, where you can say, I want to consider for the contributions only the verified publishers. If you do that now, it's going to find very few candidates. So we don't. But pinning is good. Pinning, let me go back. Pinning is good for people who know they have a verified publisher, like CoinDesk is verified. That's what this green hexagon with the check means. You pin to CoinDesk, they're going to get paid. And there's no Powerball effect. So yeah, I think the whole beta we did was a learning exercise, and the total Bitcoin that's in flight in escrow is big. And the tail's long, so the area under the curve is pretty big. A lot of those publishers will never come for their tiny slice of that. So I think Powerball is actually the right thing to get everybody else who did come on board as a publisher rewarded, and to sort of drive the game theory that way. None of this is a huge amount of money, so it's not. I don't think they're going to sue and lay out 10 times or 100 times that in lawyers' fees over the little amount at stake. But if we got big, I think it would be an issue. The idea is if we get big, we don't have to Powerball, because then we'll have verified a bunch of publishers. Bootstrapping device. I thought of something when I was hearing Bladden's question. It turns out, you probably saw this on Twitter, so I can talk about it. I don't have a lawyer shutting me up. Some skeezy outfit, Admiral, is using the DMCA to claim that their tracker tag is an anti-circumvention device. And if you block it as the easy list that we all share, AdBlock, uBlock, Origin, everybody shares, then sure enough, they send a takedown to GitHub to get their functionalclam.com domain removed from the easy list. They're scum, and DMCA is garbage law. The EFF is going to help fight this. We've been talking to them. We put it back. Haven't gotten the takedown notice yet. Not sure what we'll do. Thinking about unhosted options, thinking about what if you don't have a site to get served a takedown notice, but you just have this sort of list assembled from slices of data that's ambient in a decentralized store of some sort. When you see this sort of bad law being used or abused for anti-ad blocking, you know you're getting somewhere. And a lot of the advertisers don't want to get into this because it's just negative. It can blow up in PR. It doesn't look good. It generally doesn't work. A lot of companies like PageFair, SourcePoint, Web Spectator, in the last few years got venture capital saying, we'll claw back the ad revenue. We'll kind of fight the ad blocker users and make them whitelist or make them donate or something. Hasn't worked. It's really hard. It's a long sales cycle from zero with the publisher side. It looks good because I've talked to Condé Nast, like Wired sees 30% ad blocker usage. Turn that around, it's a 43% gain. But turning it around is hard because that cohort, which is valuable, it's web savvy, it searches and buys online. Not all gamers, but there are gamers there. That cohort will not just say, I'm going to whitelist. Sure, I'll turn off my ad blocker, whatever. So I think there will come a tipping point where the whole system will find better standards. And probably we'll have some big browser jump on board and they can take all the credit. I don't care. We want better standards in the long run. We'll be the first and the innovator that led the charge. We'll have a healthy user base, and if we get our ad model opted into, if half our users opt into it, I hope we'll have enough revenue to survive. We'll find out. Right now, thanks to the token sale, we're okay for a while. Thanks.
Thanks, Brendan. I think that's all the time we've got. Let's give a big hand. Thanks again for coming, Brendan.